Okay, we're going to take a look at exercise 8-3. Now this one is, basically this is the question on the assignment with different numbers. 8-3 is in the textbook, so we're going to use the numbers from the textbook. That is the question that's on your Connect assignment, but with different numbers, so you'll have to do it on your own there. So the question gives you information for a company, and the company uses variable costing for internal management reports and absorption costing for external reports. And they provided data for years 1, 2, and 3, and they tell us the company's fixed manufacturing overhead per unit was constant at $2,500 for all 3 years. Now, typically in a question, you will either be given the cost per unit, or you will be given the total fixed manufacturing overhead, and you'll be given the number of units in which you just divide to get the cost per unit. So we have the information, we have beginning and ending inventory in units, and we have the amount of variable costing. So we have to determine the amount of absorption costing operating income in the form of a reconciliation report. So I'm just going to skip this up here for a second. I'm just going to step down to this part of the solution. So you're given your variable costing operating income in the question. From that, we have to get to absorption costing operating income. And how we do that is we have to do one or the other. Excuse me. I had a cold a couple of weeks ago, and I cannot kick this little bit of a cough that I have left. Okay, so because I noticed in some of the discussion posting that were up about this assignment, people were putting amounts in both. It's one or the other. Either you add fixed manufacturing overhead costs that were deferred in inventory, or you deduct fixed manufacturing overhead costs that were released from inventory. And how we know what these numbers are is depending on what happened to our inventory. So you could start by putting, like I said, this in, and you know when I'm doing this, so if you get this on an exam, you're going to do this. You're going to put down your variable costing operating income. You're going to put in your category, add fixed manufacturing overhead costs deferred in inventory under absorption costing. You're going to put in your heading, deduct fixed manufacturing overhead costs released from inventory. And then you're going to have your absorption costing operating income. You're going to put all those categories in, then you're going to fill in the information. So here we're given variable costing income, so you're going to put that in. Then we're going to go look at our inventory for each year. So we're told in year 1, beginning inventory was 150, ending inventory was 160. So what happened to our inventories? Inventory got bigger. It grew by 10. So our inventory got bigger for the end of the year. So that means we are going to add fixed manufacturing overhead costs deferred in inventory. Those costs don't get expensed that year. They are added to our inventory under absorption costing. And the amount is going to be the number of units. Have a drink, see if that can clear up my throat. It's going to be the number of units, 10, multiplied by fixed manufacturing overhead cost per unit, 2,500. So we're going to add that, because that will give us the absorption costing operating income. Then we're going to go to year 2. And in year 2, just noticing this. Year 2 here, they have 80. But year 2 here, they have 160. Okay. Well, we're going to assume these are the numbers, even though it doesn't actually 100% make sense, because your ending inventory for 1 year is going to be your beginning inventory for the next year. So this is logically correct. Your ending inventory of 160 in year 1 will be your beginning inventory. Then your ending inventory in year 2 will be your beginning inventory in year 3. So this is correct. But just to show you the math, since it's already here, we will uh, we will use these numbers. The math would be the same because it is bigger. So here our inventory shrunk. It was higher at the beginning of the year than it was at the end, so it decreased by 10. Here they have 180 in, so it decreased by 30. So it still decreases. So because inventory decreased, that means inventory was released from there was cost released from inventory. So it was costs that were expenses that were like deferred in our inventory in prior years were now being released. So kind of think in your head of that way. If inventory increases, we're putting stuff in inventory, so some of those costs are getting deferred in inventory. If our inventory shrinks, stuff is coming out of inventory, which means costs are being released. So if it comes out, it's being released from inventory. If it goes in inventory, it's being deferred in the inventory. The only difference is now, it's here they're taking the 30 units by the 2,500 per unit, where in actuality it's 10 units times the 2,500 per unit, but it's still the same step, just the wrong number here. And then in year 3 again, it should be 150 and then 200, but they have 160. But the same logic applies, is that inventory grew. So our inventory increased. Items were added to inventory, which means there was costs that were attached to those items that are now being deferred in our inventory. So you take the number of units, which should have been 50, but we have 40, but same idea. You take the number of units multiplied by the cost per unit here, and this number goes added to get your very absorption costing operating income. So aside from the errors in the amounts, the theory and everything is still the same. Okay. Part 2. In year 4, the company's variable costing operating income was $240,200, and its absorption costing operating income was $205,200. So variable costing was higher. Did inventories increase or decrease during the year? Well, just so you can visualize, look for a year here where variable costing was higher, and that was in year 2. Our variable costing income was higher than our absorption costing. What happened? Our inventories decreased, so that manufacturing overhead was released from inventory. So that is what happens here. Inventories have decreased, and overhead was released from inventories. And the amount, how much fixed manufacturing overhead cost was deferred or released, well, that's just the difference between the variable and the absorption costing income. So this format, make sure you understand it. Make sure, and it's actually possible that you could be given absorption costing and you have to work the other way. So make sure you know this inside and out.